today we have that very data-driven, very user-centric, very intrusive way of doing advertisement. Now the user gets tracked a lot. The data is inaccurate. No one wins. Maybe the middleman wins, but definitely not the user and not the advertiser. I think the whole approach of having like incentivized advertisement or like incentivized views is something that is very interesting, and advertisers leverage that today, right? It just doesn't happen on a monetary standard. But try to monetize content if you don't have access to a bank account. Try to get a PayPal account if you are like from Eastern Europe. It gets really difficult already. You need to wait weeks or even months to get approval on PayPal there. And I don't think it is black and white as well. I think we can find methods and monetization models that lie in between, right? That have a little bit of value for value, that have a little bit of like pay up front, that have a little bit of pay where you enjoy. Bitcoin enables that use case of ungated and permissionless monetization straight from the second you start using it.
Egge is the co-founder of Starbackr and an ad industry veteran who has fallen down the Bitcoin and Lightning rabbit hole. In our discussion, Egge explained how the world of advertising works today. He explained how Lightning could offer improvements for both consumers and advertisers, and how the creator economy might evolve on a Bitcoin standard. I've also added Egge to today's show splits, so if you enjoy this episode and if you learn something new, the best way you can support the show is by sending in sats over the Lightning Network. You can use any Podcasting 2.0 app, but my favorite one to use is Fountain. Just a quick shout out. Today's show is sponsored by Voltage. Voltage is the industry standard and next generation provider of Lightning Network infrastructure. We'll have more from Voltage later in the show. Egge, welcome to the show. We've got a really interesting conversation lined up today, covering a topic that doesn't get much attention in the Bitcoin Lightning space, and that is advertising. Before we get into the detailed conversation, how about we start with a little background from yourself? Tell listeners what you're doing today for work and how you got into Bitcoin.
Yeah, sounds great. First of all, thanks for having me, Kevin. And so basically, I got into Bitcoin, I'd say almost 2 years ago now, and I fell into the rabbit hole really bad. Like I did a free fall, let's say. So I actually managed to ship around the whole like altcoin and shitcoin phase. I got really lucky there. And I think my entry point was basically Tesla buying into Bitcoin. That's what got me really excited about it. But back then, everything was very different. I was that typical legacy guy, right? That's like a lot of consuming and everything, like that linear economy person. And I got into Bitcoin the like content creator way. I consumed a lot of content on YouTube. And there's a very cool German community in the whole space, like a very maximalist community as well. And that's probably the luck I had that I got into that. That's like Block Trainer is a very famous German YouTube channel that right before I got into the space switched around to Bitcoin only content. And then I also found a community around 21, that is 21 in German. Which is also a maximalist community. And I got really interested in the topic. I think the technical background was what triggered me the most. That's why I started reading the books Mastering Bitcoin and Mastering the Lightning Network pretty much at the beginning of my journey, which really got me into that. And I am a person that's really into like online communities. So I spend a lot of my time on Telegram. And I think that is one of the reasons why I got into like the more deep topics very quickly, because I started explaining to people. And at least for my part, when you start to explain to people, you really do understand that you don't understand or what you don't understand, only if you try to explain. So that was my entry point. And now the whole thing, or the whole Bitcoin topic, has spread so much in my life that it basically takes up the most part of it, and it takes up my career as well now, because then last year in August I met Joe and Arun, which are now my co-founders at Starbackr, and we founded Starbackr together we started the project in August, but then incorporated in December. And that's basically how I got here today.
Love it. And what were you doing beforehand?
Before I got into Bitcoin, so my legacy life, which still leaks a little bit into my Bitcoin life today, I spent my time doing advertisement. That's how I earned bread and butter. Doing digital advertisement, like display and bannering. Actually, my family founded an advertisement agency 20 years ago, or 21 years ago now. And if you think about how long Germany has been having like an active internet usage, that's pretty much like since the beginning of the internet, right? There was AOL and stuff, but then like once the internet got a little bit more adopted, that was pretty much the beginning. What they do is they are like a monetization, not a platform, but like an agency that does monetization for Web 2.0 websites. So you can basically they abstract all the difficult things for you. You just get one script tag, you implement it on your site, and then they will do the monetization. They will try to sell you ad spaces. It's basically like AdSense, but way better and with a better cut and everything. So yeah, that's what I did before. In that company, I did business development, so getting more partners into the portfolio of that company, and also ad management and tech development. But when I say tech development, not like coding ourselves, but like finding new partners, finding new technology that might be interesting for the company and for all the partners in the portfolio.
Interesting. Now, when having discussions with Bitcoiners, the topic of advertising and the topic of people tracking you wherever you go on a website, it's a very controversial one that a lot of Bitcoiners don't like, and privacy advocates are often rail against advertising. And so there's a lot of discussion about how advertising is bad today. There's also, on the flip side, if you're looking at it from a business's perspective, this is how you get new customers, and this is how people have been doing this for a very long time. They've been advertising their business and promoting themselves and paying for it. How do you kind of make these two opposing ideas work together? What is the current state of the advertising industry? What's wrong with it today? And what do people kind of not understand about it?
Yeah, that's a very difficult topic, right? I think when you go to a very base level, advertisement is something that is required at some level, in some way as well. Actually, I learned marketing and media management, so that's what I studied. And I always like to think about marketing in a way that is actually change management. And it's not change management like sustainability and all the things, but what you want to achieve as a marketer is basically change. And what I really do believe is that advertisement and marketing always should add value. That's like, obviously there's the whole topic around like scammy marketing and getting people an obnoxious way to getting people to buy your product even though it doesn't add value, to trick them into buying. But I want to put that away because that's not like, obviously that's bad. We don't need to talk about that. But in the end, what a marketer should do is to basically find the value that the product will bring to the people, and then to like point that out and build a campaign around that and actually like bring that value to the people. And I think that's a good thing. So advertising isn't bad per se, but can actually add value to the people, to the product, and also like for the people in the end. Also, I think advertisement is required, or at least currently it is required as a monetization rail for businesses or content creators or whatever. So those are the upside. Those two are the upside to the whole topic. Now, the reason why most people think of of advertisement as something bad today is probably because how it developed in the last like 10 years or something, right? Because if you look at the history of advertisement, and I mean, that's a very old topic, right? We have out of home and print advertisement. We had those for decades, right? We had those way before the internet. And most of the time, as I said, it is something that should add value to your life. And today we have that very data-driven, very user-centric, very intrusive way of doing advertisement, in that, which is called programmatic in the display world, at least, which is probably just an approach of advertisers to get or to gain more efficiency when it comes to advertisement. But yeah, that is definitely the thing that people think about when they hear advertisement. That's why it has such a bad stigma, right? Why people think bad about advertisement, because they will try to get all your browsing history from your cookies and try to track you online and get more efficiency out of it and try to measure the ad efficiency and the ad return, and everything gets to a level where advertising has to become more cheap, it has to be more efficient and everything, and that's probably why it developed that way. It's a little bit like the whole consuming topic around like low quality products that sell for less because people don't want to spend it. I mean, that's the whole topic that we have, like when we talk about circular economies and Bitcoin in general, right? That we have to turn everything down a little bit, that we need to think about how we spend and maybe spend even more to have like a more quality or have more quality in the end. And so that advertisement, the whole advertisement definitely has that very legacy economy feel to it, where just everything becomes cheap and everything becomes less qualitative, right? So I think what's really bad about that is that it's not about like it's not about the quality of the advertisement itself anymore. It's just getting really obnoxious, and the people try to get into the home of the receiving end and of the user even a little bit more. And yeah, I really lost my track right now. I'm sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, that's really interesting though. It's like, is it because we have programmatic ads that this has now become the preferred business model for some of the largest companies in the world? Like, was that the unlock that made it so appealing for Facebook and Google to use this as a monetization strategy rather than, sell something?
I think it's there's different effects that took place here, right? I think one is that companies. So let's go back a little bit. There's ad agencies, and those ad agencies, they have the task of developing campaigns and trying to find methods of advertisement that are more efficient than others. When we started out, as I said, we had out of home, for example. Out of home advertisement has no tracking. There are some ideas around that, how you could measure efficiency, right? But in the end, like, it is an ad. You can't tell if a user has seen it or not, if it's just like a paper print, like somewhere in the street, right? Then companies came about that had more efficient ways of doing advertisement. And obviously they sold that product, and they also needed investment and like funds. So ad agencies started putting a lot of money into those business models. And what happened now, what's really interesting, is that because those agencies invested so much money into this technology, they had to sell that product to the client as well. The client is now the advertiser. So the ad agency invested that money and now tried to, I wouldn't say scam, but try to sell that product because they had invested the money and now they have to get some return of it. So the brand gets, I mean, like, the ad agency is the advisor of the brand. So what the ad agency sells them should be the right thing, right? A great example of this is IP targeting, for example. And if you spend a little bit time in like the internet technical world, and you know that IP addresses are not a good way of actually pinpointing your location. I think my ISP is located like 500 kilometers away from my home. So if someone tried to target an advertisement to me and to my like hometown and used my IP address to do that, they would fail horribly because they couldn't reach me. But for a decade, or not almost a decade, that was the preferred way of regional targeting, of location targeting in the internet. And the reason why is because agencies bought that technology. One is IP to location, for example, that was implemented in all the services and ad service and stuff. And now they had to sell that to the client. And that happens with a lot of things. that happens so often in programmatic advertisement, and that's something very frustrating as well for us as an advertising agency back then, when customers always asked for these features, and you were like, well, you shouldn't buy that. We can do that, but you shouldn't buy that because there's just no efficiency. But because that money was spent, and most of the time the publisher, so the site where that advertisement runs or the one that monetizes that site, doesn't get to speak with the client, but just with the agency that has that bias now and has to sell the product. So the quality turns bad in the end. And that happened so many times and in so many different locations. And with the whole programmatic topic as well, right? Everything got more centralized. All those companies got bought up and like formed together. And in the end, you don't even have a choice anymore. When you come out as a small site, for example, you have AdSense, right? That's your entry to display advertisement for most content creators or for most websites. You don't really have a choice to go to somewhere else because other companies might not take you because you're too small. And now you're stuck with what Google wants. And the client on the other side wants to reach that audience. And now they are stuck as well with what Google wants. And in the end, it's just like Google's thing now. And that happens in so many places because if you think about very, very, very interesting insight might be that Google runs pretty much everything when it comes to Web 2.0 monetization. Even with a company like ours, you have that problem that the most used browser is Google Chrome, right? The most used web engine or search engine is Google Search. You have the most used ad server, which is, as I said, the technology that does all the campaign planning and serves the ad in the end, which is Google Ad Manager. The biggest programmatic exchange is Google Ad Exchange. And now you maybe start to understand why there's no big choice to none, like not to the publisher, not to the client, not to the agency in the end. It's just that technology provided it now dictates everything.
Right. So Google's sitting in the middle here. And on the one side, we have the advertiser who has this product they want to sell, but in order to get to Google now, they have to pay more because Google's their only kind of option at the stage they're at, maybe. And then on the other side, you got the consumer who is going to get more and more ads over time now, over the last YouTube right now, you go on YouTube and you can't watch a single video without seeing one, sometimes two ads. They used to be like 6-second ads. Now they're like 8 or 10 or 15 seconds. And the consumer's getting more and more ads and no financial benefit from seeing them. And they're, they don't really know where their data is being used or where it's going. They kind of have lost a bit of control of that. So it seems like there's this, Google's found this position in the middle of these two parties. Is it fair to say that now with Bitcoin and Lightning and the discussion about peer-to-peer internet apps, is there a way to eliminate that middle, that center that is preventing the advertiser from talking directly to the user?
I think yes, that would be possible, but I think it's a very long way until we get there, right? There's so many things that can be fixed with Bitcoin straight away. For example, like with Starbackr, we said, okay, digital content monetization is something that can be fixed quite easily by just pulling out the legacy payment system and putting in Bitcoin, right? That doesn't solve all the problems, but it solves many, many problems very fast and very quickly. I think advertisement is something that is way more complicated than that because that system is so complex. It has so many different parts to it, and you always have to think about that. So the problem is that, and that happens with like Google and because you said YouTube and having like 3 ads in a row, right? What happens and what's really important to think about is that there are people that earn a living from advertisement already, and not like me, for example, who did like advertisement for someone else. But I'm talking about content creators that actually have to have that monetization rail to earn a living because that's what they do for bread and butter, right? So if you now go ahead and try to change that system completely, you would have to find a way to do it in such a way that the revenue that can be generated off it is the same with the legacy world. And that's really, really tough, right? Because if you take that content monetization we do on Starbackr, right? If you have like 100 followers on a legacy world, and you know that they understand Bitcoin, for example, and you can port them over, or you can partially port them over, you will still gain the same revenue. But if you try to do that same thing with Web 2.0 advertisement, the overall capital that's being deployed in advertisement versus in like legacy advertisement versus the capital that would be deployed in Bitcoin advertisement, I think there is a big gap between those two numbers, and that is because adoption is not. We haven't gotten that far yet, right? So I think
Right.
that's very complicated to make that jump, and also I think it's not just the payment part that's the problem, but as I said, it's the whole setup, right? It's the whole system revolving around like implementing ads on your site or in your podcast and everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about ads and creator monetization, like direct monetization for creators, like audience funded, um, this brought up an interesting question. And I don't know the answer to it. I don't know if there is data on this, but do you have a sense for like what portion of creator revenue today, like on Web 2, is advertising revenue versus direct monetization, if it's through like PayPal or Patreon or some other kind of like Web 2 system? And then do you expect that will shift in a transition to a Bitcoin standard where, now we have a tool for making much faster payments at any amount in the Lightning Network? And then we may also have some gains to be had in the advertising world as well. So do you expect there to be a shift in that percentage?
So coming to your first question, I don't have any numbers on that, but I expect that there's a big gap between those numbers as well. From my feeling, I'd say the revenue that's generated through ads is way bigger than the revenue that's generated through like users directly paying for content.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But we definitely see a shift in that in the legacy world as well, without Bitcoin, because monetization and advertisement gets so much more difficult. And when I say more difficult, I mean like the new way of doing that, because they are more aware about privacy issues. They in Europe, for example, we have the GDPR now, which is making advertisement or programmatic advertisement very difficult, right? We have those consent banners everywhere where you need to say, yeah, I want to have personalized ads. So the whole privacy awareness is making things harder for advertisers, and that's why a lot of publishers and mediums and media in general go to the direct paid approach, where they say, well, you can now choose whether you want to have like pay $6, for example, have that site ad free, or use or give us your consent and have ads for like programmatic ads. I don't think that's a good approach, because now you have to choose whether you give up all your data or you pay the pay gate. It's not a good decision to be made, I think. But I think, yeah, as I said, the number already shifts without Bitcoin and Lightning. Now, what enables Lightning, or what what Lightning unlocks for us is having like more open standards and more open approaches to that, right? When we think about Albi, for example, having like a native Lightning wallet in your browser that can give a content creator a little bit of money every time you visit their site automatically, right? And removing that friction of paying and removing the requirement for having accounts, which is, I think, the most important thing, right? Because obviously I would be willing to pay every time I visit a site, but if I had to sign up there and put my credit card details and everything, that is a big friction for me, right? So
Yeah.
Lightning removes that and enables very interesting use cases when it comes to monetization that is not through advertisement. So I think definitely it unlocks great opportunities for that. But again, the shift will be very difficult, because you, as someone that tries to monetize themselves only through donations, for example, and I just yesterday I had a podcast episode with someone from Germany that had exactly this issue. He said, well, I do open source content on YouTube. Like I want education to be free, but funding myself just through donations is very difficult for me. But I don't want to go somewhere and have ads. And also, I'm very privacy focused. That's not something people usually sponsor and write. And it's very hard for me to find someone that wants to advertise on my site as well. So they are currently like struggling with funding their own content creation job, and they need a sidekick for that, right? So I think that shift will be very difficult, but Lightning definitely helps. And as implementations progress and everything gets a little bit easier, that shift will become more seamless, I think. But we're not there yet.
Yeah. It's interesting the way you framed the Web 2 discussion is like you either lose control over your data and you get bombarded with ads, or if the platform decides they can make more money by charging you, they charge you, and you either lose money from paying the service fee, or you get hit with ads. It's like, yes, there's obviously a lot of benefits that come with using services like Facebook and Twitter and Google. These things have been great for the internet. I don't want to diminish that, but you're on the losing end on both sides when it comes to either getting hit with ads or paying. And I wonder if Lightning can flip the entire script to the positive side, meaning like if you had opt-in ads, privacy first, no, by default there'd be no ads, and only if you wanted to receive ads, you could then use some of these open standards, like you talked about, Albie. You could use some of these standards to then earn from the ads. So if you want to give advertisers access to your own data that I guess you could store in theory on a node or some personal server, you could then give that data up in exchange for money. So by default, you either have no ads, which is a great experience and an improvement over Web 2, or if you want to see ads, you're going to get paid for them. So it's like a total opposite shift there. It feels like that's a very powerful transition that we could go through. What are your thoughts on how we might get to that moment?
I think the whole approach of having like incentivized advertisement or like incentivized views is something that is very interesting, and advertisers leverage that today, right? It just doesn't happen on a monetary standard. When you look at Web 2.0 currently, or like legacy advertisement, let's say, there's incentivized views when it comes to mobile games, for example. It's like, you want another life for your mobile game, then watch this ad. This is basically incentivized, right? Now, I think it would be a lot more efficient if we would say, hey, by the way, if you view this ad, we earn $5 CPM, for example, and we're going to give you 50 cents CPM of that, because actually your attention is what we are buying. And yeah, exactly right. That is what's happening. Like the advertisement is a trade for attention. That's what the whole thing is about, and that's why in like 10 years ago ads were so flashy as well, because they tried to steal the attention from the user from that site. But now if we have that transparency about like monetization, and we say to the user, hey, by the way, if you give us more data, if we are able to target more accurately, you would earn even more. I think that would be something that would work very great. Now the question is, how do you prevent fraud in that situation, for example? How do you make sure that data that the user provides actually is accurate, and that they syllable attacks, for example, that they don't like create like 1,000 accounts to earn even more and stuff. But there's definitely like ways I could imagine that would work, like probably tying the return to a conversion, for example, to say, hey, if we see that your account doesn't convert or you don't click or whatever, right? And also there's like great algorithms that try to detect ad fraud nowadays. So I think there's definitely like models that could work with that. And also regarding the whole GDPR topic, there are also already today there are companies that try to do advertising more privately, right? That try to preserve the user's privacy a little bit better. Not because it's in the best interest of the company, but because European laws require that today. So people start to think about ways, how could we do programmatic advertisement without doxing the user completely and without tracking and stuff. And one implementation, or one way of implementing that would be to have like a private data store in your browser, and instead of actually giving that data out, you would receive a call to your browser that be like, hey, this is an ad for phishing. I don't want to know your profile, but please, dear algorithm that runs locally, tell me if the user you're currently running, or if the machine you're currently running on is interested in phishing, for example, right? So that, I mean, like the problem with that, again, with a lot of calls and a lot of data, advertisers could again try to build a profile, but still, it's a little bit better than just openly like having everything in your local storage or like cookie storage. And that the cool thing now is that as I said, that it's an incentivization could now happen without any accounts, right? It could happen in your Bitcoin wallet. That Bitcoin wallet could be the identity. Like we could use private and public key pairs to have that whole like browsing identity. And I definitely think the way of opting into advertisement and putting your interests out actively would increase the efficiency for the advertisers as well. Because now we only talked about the user side now, but to be honest, the advertisement experience today for the advertiser, for the brand, is not a good one as well. Because I want to, if you use Google services, everyone should like go to their, I think it's like Google, I have to look that up, but there is a site where you can see your personalized ad profile with Google.
Yeah, like see what data Google has collected about you, right?
Yeah, it's like it gives you like, depends on how long you use that service, but like it gives you like 50 to 200 categories you might fit into. And it's very funny how inaccurate the data is. Even though even if you use YouTube and if you use Google services a lot, that is very inaccurate. And that obviously is a big problem for the advertiser as well, because now they get sold, as I said, they get sold a product that promises to deliver a good targeted ad experience, but the data is off. And now the user gets tracked a lot. The data is inaccurate. No one wins. Maybe the middleman wins, but definitely not the user and not the advertiser. And if we switch to a model where the user actively provides information about themselves and about their interest, I think it would be a big win for the user as well, regardless of incentivization, because you would actually receive ads that you might be interested in, which isn't a bad thing, I believe, as long as it doesn't get taken advantage of, right?
Yeah, and as long as you get to opt in.
Yeah, as long as it's your choice, right? As it's your choice, and it's actually like, as I said, added value. Yeah. Then it's a win-win for everyone, right? I think the most frustrating part for me is if I go to a website. Let's say I use a normal privacy, like a non-privacy cookie browser. I go to a website and buy a pair of shoes. I will get shoe ads for like a week. And I'm like, well, I bought shoes. That doesn't make any sense. Why do I get advertisement for more shoes? I just bought them. You should know that I'm not interested in that anymore. So I think the question implementation-wise is definitely how could we build a system that is not very hard to use from a user's perspective? Because that information, like I just bought shoes, is something that would be required for the advertiser again, right? But I don't want to go ahead and update my interest profile every time I buy something, right? So I think that is something to be solved, but I definitely see the possibilities of having that account list and like wallet based, for example, like Alby extension could do that, right? Alby extension could have a place where you put interests and then Alby communicates with like a server and you get advertising for that. And you get a little bit paid every time because Alby can give that server an invoice. Be like, hey, you just served an ad, here's the invoice, pay that. And only then I will display it to the user. I think that's a very good approach. But again, is the revenue there? Is the potential of actually like doing a switch without hurting all the people that currently rely on monetization through ads? How will that switch look like? I think that are the big topics that need to be solved.
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Voltage. Voltage is the industry standard for Lightning Network infrastructure. Creating layer 2 applications and services on top of Bitcoin starts with Voltage, where you can spin up nodes, get access to liquidity, optimize your node, and much more. Voltage is leading the way as the next generation provider of Lightning Network infrastructure. And if you want to get a free trial and start using Voltage today, you can do so at voltage.cloud. Right. I mean, it makes a ton of sense to have the users be able to tell, like, there's no algorithm that's ever going to be able to detect or, figure out. It's going to have a hard time guessing what I want. And it's always going to have some kind of lag or latency or some kind of error in judgment. And when I get a light bulb idea in my head, like I want a new pair of sneakers, I know that before a computer knows that, typically. Some may argue it's the other way around, but I think that there's still a, like I have a better sense for what I want than the algorithms that can't even figure out where I live.
Yeah.
So it does make sense that a user should be able to display that information. And I hear you on the challenge of like getting something like this off the ground. If you, as a hypothetical here, if you were tasked with like building an emerging, peer-to-peer advertising ecosystem, how would you go about doing that today? Where would you start?
That's a tough question. When you say when you say peer-to-peer, I think the first question that needs to be answered first is how will the Web 3.0, I don't like that wording because it's like so stigmatized by all the different weird project around that, but how would the web of the future look like? And are we actually going to have something like a peer-to-peer internet, right? Because if you have like a peer-to-peer internet that has like direct connections between the two servers and not like that whole weird interweb that we have today, how would advertisement actually work, right? Because today it's very interesting if you go to a website, a normal legacy website, and open the source code and look at where all the assets come from. That's not a peer-to-peer connection. You're not connecting to the website you open, but you're connecting to like hundreds of servers that provide fonts, that might provide advertisement, that provide images and stuff. So that all of that would be gone in the peer-to-peer world, because you would need to. It would be peer-to-peer, right? So how would an advertiser actually go in there without, again, invading your privacy? I think approach to that would be actually to have, as I said, maybe browsers or browsers extensions that could like inject content into your browsing experience on a secure level, because now the ad wouldn't come from the site you requested or from the peer you requested or whatever. It would be your browser extension would reach out to an ad server and get that ad from there. And the cool thing would be if you could control that connection, if you could verify that is a secure connection. And then again, instead of using cookies and like all that tracking history and all your browsing history, as you said, maybe have like a profile where you say, well, I want to opt into personalized ads. Here's the tracking profile I want to have. And now I think when it comes to like, when you ask about the like, how would I build the business, the advertiser side would need to come first. I think you would need to pitch that idea to advertisers and make them understand why it's so important. Now, tying back to the beginning of the conversation, that is really hard because you need to get around the agencies, because those agencies are not interested in new tech. They have bought tech like for the last 5 years, let's say. They want to they need to sell that tech for like the next 5 years to actually break even, right? So you would need to find companies and advertisers that are actually interested in products like these. And I think that's where Bitcoin would become very, very helpful, right? Because what I noticed is that Bitcoin industry is growing very fast, and most founders and most companies in this industry understand this whole issue, right? They are very close to that topic, and also they do have funding. It's not like that this is a small industry without any funding, right? There's tons of Bitcoin companies that spend tons of dollars on marketing budget every year. And I think if you would go to them and be like, hey, let's not take over the whole internet. Let's not fix everything now, but let's start with us as like a minimal viable audience or like minimal viable market. And when I say us, I mean Bitcoiners, right? Let's build our own little internet here. And I think that's what a lot of companies do already, right? I think that's what Impervious plans. Like everything is their own little space, and we don't need to take over the whole world now, but we can have like a small project where we say like, okay, let's take Bitcoin content creators, let's take Bitcoin advertisers, and let's take Bitcoin tech providers and put everything into our own little space. And that's what's happening already. Like take Fountain, for example, right?
Yeah.
Or like other like any Bitcoin content creator, there's like all the ads you find is Bitcoin advertisers, right? Because that makes sense as well, because it's the audience, it's the advertiser, it's a perfect fit.
Right.
And I think
Yeah, we're
starting
starting
it
to see
from
that.
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
But we're starting to see that emerge. I think on Fountain and on Stacker News, we're seeing advertisers in different forms. So advertisers in the form of like an audio clip on Fountain, and then advertisers in the form of job poster on Stacker News, and they're effectively funneling revenue. So they're paying for placement, and that revenue then flows to the users of the product. So you're right; it is kind of picking up already. There's a bit of steam behind that idea of like users being paid for participating on a platform and being targeted, right?
Yeah, and I think what's missing currently is the provider that does this as a business, right? Because right now all those companies and all those platforms do it by themselves. They do it in their closed system, and it's like there is no place where I could go. Maybe there is an agency I don't know of, but like there is no place that I can go to set up a campaign, for example, and that would then run on Fountain as an audio clip or in Stack and Use as a Stack and Use now has those job postings, right? But I think you understand what I mean. There's no place where I can go to get my ad to all the platforms. There's the middleman is currently missing, and if there's someone out there listening to this podcast that wants to found a company, I think that's currently missing. That's the missing piece, to have like a technology or a standard that actually plugs in with all those endpoints, and that could be that central platform to like where an advertiser could just put in a campaign and it would run on different places. As an advertiser, I don't want to go to all the platforms and build different assets for all platforms and have to adjust everything. I want to just put in a line item in a system and then click on a button and maybe connect it with my node, or like fund a wallet that will automatically pay invoices that come from other systems. And I think that is exactly what I meant when I said Lightning enables open standards, because now I don't even need to know the person that I'm selling my ad to, right? That I'm buying ad space from. Sorry, right? Because I can just have that system that connects to different platforms, fund a wallet, and click go, right? And now all the payment will be done while serving the ad, not having to bill afterwards or not having to do stuff, right? Obviously, there's still the tax thing that we need to worry about, but let's not talk about that because it just makes things too complicated. We don't know where we are in like 2 decades with that. But I think that would be that is currently the missing piece, having like one place where you can insert your ad and then it would like spread out to all those Bitcoin platforms that are currently out there that support advertisement. And obviously they would have to implement that as well, right? To have that endpoint to actually receive the ad and pay for the ad as well, or get paid for the ad space.
Big idea for the Bitcoin entrepreneurs listening to this.
Yeah, exactly.
In the short term, though, if we think about the creator space in Lightning, how do you think monetization is going to work in the next couple of years? Like not thinking out the next couple of decades, but just right now and into the next couple of years. We have a few different models emerging, right? We've talked about advertising. We have value for value, and then we have pay as you enjoy, or like set pricing. Things like Mash offer like a spin on value for value. They have some similarities and some differences. And then there's just direct, like pay $10 for this branded coffee mug or something. how do you think if you can break those different segments down, which one do you think will dominate in the next couple of years for the Bitcoin creators and the Lightning kind of community?
I definitely think value for value is something very valid that we'll see a lot of use in the future as well. And we do, I mean, with podcasting 2.0, right? You have that very cool and user friendly integration where it actually works, right? What I think currently is missing is like that little bump to the user that says, hey, by the way, you enjoyed this show for like an hour now. It is time to maybe give something back. I think that's a big problem, right? If you, I think there's even a study about that. If you like, if you have like an event and you don't put a price on it, but you say everyone that attends has to donate, you will actually make more money than if you would have priced the event beforehand, right? I think that I'm pretty sure I read a study about that. I need citation needed on that point, but I can definitely imagine us humans that we work like that, right? Having that or having that that feeling in your heart that you want to give back is something that can be leveraged by content creators, not in a bad way. When I say leverage, it sounds a little bit like scam, but that's not what I meant. But I think the implementations that we currently have lack that little bump or like reminder that says, hey, give something back. As soon as we have that, and it's not really hard to do, I would love to see that more on like value for value platforms. I think that is a very valid model to monetize. But again, it is a very risky model as well, because you can't really calculate your monthly return from that, right? It's very hard if you have to pay bills to be like, okay, well, hopefully I get enough donations in the next month to actually pay my bills, right? It's very hard to calculate. And that's something that we see with open source development as well. So
Right.
I think it will definitely be used a lot, especially once, like, as I said, implementation gets to the next level and it gets more adopted as well. Because right now there's, talking about podcasting 2.0, there's Breeze and Fountain that I know of. But those applications don't have enough use yet. And there's a lot of people that just listen to podcasts on Spotify or somewhere else. So that's one issue. I definitely think that idea of paying for content while you enjoy is something that will develop, even that might be an even more valid case for like content creators to monetize the platform. I mean, like, I'm very biased on that, right? Because at Starbackr we do have pay gates, for example. We do have monthly subscriptions for creators. And I think the reason why that works so good is because it doesn't need it doesn't require the user to rethink everything, because they are used to those models from legacy platforms.
Yeah.
And I don't think it is black and white as well. I think we can find methods and monetization models that lie in between, right? That have a little bit of value for value, that have a little bit of like pay up front, that have a little bit of pay where you enjoy. But I definitely see the whole use case around like monetization through Lightning of content creators. But what I'm always worried a little bit about, and I might get a lot of boos for that, but what I'm always a little bit worried about is also like the whole bookkeeping and like tax thing. And that's not very important if you have like a small YouTube channel and you earn like a couple of bucks each week. But if you want to actually like earn a living and have to pay bills and everything, that might get very difficult, right? If you don't have, right, that you get into a weird position. Definitely depends on your jurisdiction as well and where you live. But that's definitely one thing that is way easier to solve with pay up front. Here's a bill, here's an invoice, like not a Lightning invoice, but a real invoice. This is your VAT. You're done now, right?
Right.
So yeah,
I agree.
very difficult to answer.
Yeah, that is the most chaotic part of earning on Lightning right now for me is, I've probably earned on like 8 or so different apps in the Lightning ecosystem in the last month for various things. And I've now started to do like a monthly consolidation. And so every month, at the end of the month, yesterday I did this, just like figure out how much did you earn from each platform, consolidate it, and make sure you're kind of like, I want to make sure I'm keeping track of, books and stuff like that. Because the numbers are getting to the point where they're hundreds of dollars a month from Lightning, from, some value for value, some pay for messaging and things like that. But it's at hundreds of dollars a month now, so it's too big to ignore. And I think that's a for sure an underrated thing that people are not fully appreciating the need for that yet. But as more creators start to earn more money, I think that will become pretty obvious. And it's a problem that definitely needs to be solved. But I think the idea of being able to operate on all these different creator monetization models, it can be very appealing. Like if we can fix the issue of like consolidating payments and letting people know, here's exactly how much you earned, this is what you owe, this is your income. If we can figure that part out, then I think that the part about having any possible model to fit your content is great. Like for some people, value for value is going to make a lot of sense. For some people, it's going to be pay as you enjoy. For some people, it's going to be pure subscription. For some people, it's going to be pay once and get lifetime access. And I think the beauty of it is like we can do all of that on Lightning, whereas like all the other kind of like gated Web 2 systems or anything built on fiat rails, it can only do a subset of those things, right? It can maybe target 2 or 3 of them. Maybe you can do subscriptions if they're bigger than $10 a month on Patreon. Maybe you can do, big purchases, but good luck doing the 50-cent purchases on a credit card. So I think there's definitely value in having a lot of these different models to play with. At least that's my opinion.
I think what is very important, what you just said as well, is the gated part, right? Legacy world is so permissioned. And I recently just wrote an article about that, a very short blog post, what the problem of current digital content monetization is, and what the problem of like the whole gated and permissioned legacy payment world is. And most people in Western countries might not even notice it. And that's maybe because they are in that financial privilege. That's maybe because the content they provide is not controversial enough to actually be a problem, right? But that is the reason why we founded Starbackr, because we said, well, we do have a problem with gatekeeping, and those gatekeepers are not legitimated by like the people. They are not voted on. Those are companies that impose their moral standards on everyone. And it's not only Visa and MasterCard that do that, but because we talked about Google before, when you want to use now, coming back to the Web 2.0 example, if you want to use Google Ad Server for your publishing, right? If you have a website, you want to put that ad server as like that monetization tool on top. Google will crawl your website and verify it and say yes or no. It's not like you can host that software yourself and just put it on and be like, well, it's my site, and as long as an advertiser wants to purchase on that site, they should be allowed to. Google will decide if you're allowed to use Google Ad Server or not. And that is a big problem, right? I mean, as I said, like most people might not notice it because they just, like, as I said, privileged in the Western world with the financial system that we have. But try to monetize content if you don't have access to a bank account. Try to get a PayPal account if you are like from Eastern Europe. It gets really difficult already. You need to wait weeks or even months to get approval on PayPal there. And that is something that Lightning can solve, right? Or like Bitcoin. That's like straight from the minute you host your or you deploy your wallet, you're able to receive funds. You don't even need something like a BTC Pay server, which obviously make things easier. But as soon as you have a wallet and you have like a static address, you could say, hey, here, or like a Lightning address or Allen URL, whatever it is. Obviously, like the more sophisticated the implementation gets, and value for value, for example, is a very sophisticated implementation in my view. But Bitcoin enables that use case of ungated and permissionless monetization straight from the second you start using it. And that's something that is really strong about that. And a lot of people forget that from time to time, right? And exactly that's why as I said, why we founded Starbackr, because we wanted to enable content monetization for everyone, not only the people that are permissioned by Visa and MasterCard or by Google or whoever it might be, but actually for everyone.
Right. That last part, for everyone, is really important. And I'm actually just realizing something now as you're saying this, is like, if we look at, the way stock trading has evolved, we went from this brokerage model where, only the people who kind of knew what they were doing had access. The people who, you have to put in a bit of work, you have to go to your bank, you have to get them to sign off on papers, and you $10 stock trading fee every time you make a trade, to like Robinhood and Cash App, where it's like you can invest as little as $1, buying fractional shares, 0 fee. Literally anyone can participate. No credentials, no kind of like, education required at all. And, we can debate the pros and cons of that, but it basically opened the floodgates for everyone to participate. And now I wonder, like, if we imagine a future where Lightning is like the standard, is this going to open it up so that everyone can become a paid content creator? Anyone can earn for their content? Because right now, I think in Web 2, that was part of the vision. Like, oh, anyone can create now. Anyone can make stuff. Yes, it's true. Anyone can create, but very few can get paid from their creations, right?
Yeah.
Like we did open up, anyone can make a tweet, but good luck getting paid for that tweet. It's just like there's still a very small fraction of people that are getting paid for the content they create. Do you think that we open this up to absolutely everyone? And are we going to see any new types of content created as a result?
First of all, yes, I do believe that we can open it up to everyone. That is exactly what we try to do, right? That's why, I mean, when we founded Starbackr, it was a very tough decision. And I might just disclose this, that we were like, do we really want to incorporate, or would it be better to host an onion, for example? That it could be like the Silk Road of content. But we said, well, and now you can discuss if that would be good or not, and if you like want to have like free markets and stuff. But what we wanted to achieve is to solve a problem for as many people as we can do, and that problem was that gated payment rails, right? And so we decided to not do that. We decided to have a clear website, because then we can actually have that accessible to as many people, up to everyone, right? So that was the first decision that we had to make. Now, when it comes to different types of content, I definitely do believe that, especially when it comes to more riskier types of content that are just excluded from the whole monetization today because payment processors don't allow them. And again, that is totally up to you if you want that or not. But that is how we as Starbackr positioned that. We said there is no moral censorship. If that content is legal in the state that we are incorporated, that is something that we are required to do, you're allowed to post it on Starbackr. And that is something that no other platform that is based on legacy payment rails can do. And we've seen that now, taking an example from the adult space. We've seen that last year with OnlyFans, right? Which was one of the reasons why we actually founded Starbackr. What happened there was that OnlyFans announced that they plan on banning adult content from their platform. And we sat together and we're like, why would they do that? It doesn't, from a business perspective, that doesn't make any sense. Why is that happening? Because even though they have cooking videos and there's like some sport videos on there and sport content, most of the revenue probably comes from the adult sector. That's no secret, right? Why, as a company, why would they do that? And if you started investigating that a little bit, you would really quickly find out that it's Visa and MasterCard putting pressure on them and being like, hey, you have to do that, right? Because it's too risky for our business. It's too risky for our payment network. Stakeholders don't want that.
So who's putting pressure on Visa and MasterCard? I want to hear more about like how far does this chain go? Because that makes sense to me that, yeah, if your processors are going to be putting pressure on you, you may have to make a decision that is not perfectly in line with your revenue if you had your own way. But who's then putting pressure on Visa and MasterCard, and how far does that chain, go back?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer because that's not information that's like disclosed or like publicly available, right? You can definitely, if you look at the cases that happened in the past, you can definitely find some people that are part of that company that are just have like very like old or like outdated moral standards, let's say, or like conventional moral standards, depends on your views. And in the end, I think it is also when you grow that big as a central company like Visa and Visa, Mastercard, or PayPal did, due diligence and risk management get very, very difficult. And I mean, like, there is a part of me that can understand them acting that way because they have to ensure that they don't lose that insane monopoly position that they currently have, right? So they want to protect the network, and that might be the reason why they do that. But then again, I think it is also, like, as I said, stakeholders with very conventional ways of thinking and just not a very libertarian and free way of doing things, right? And what is a question that I definitely can't answer is how did it get that way, and why is no one wondering about that? Having a centralized company that is in a position of power, there's no comparison to that. If you start to think about what Visa and Mastercard actually can do with a simple click of a button, they can wipe out businesses, they can wipe out business cases with a simple click, they can wipe out existences of content creators in a minute, just because they are able to arbitrarily exclude anyone, and actually they are allowed to, right? Because it's their terms and conditions. It's like, well, we don't like what you do, you can't be part of our network anymore. And what is important to understand is if you build a company and you get to a certain size, and that's why I can totally understand OnlyFans when they bow to the pressure. When you get to that size and you risk losing that monetization rail, and in Web 2.0, it is the only monetization rail they have. There's no alternative in Web 2.0. If you lose that rail, you can shut down within a week, right? There's no way you can actually like support the company and all the structure you have built as a company and keep your employees if you lose Visa and MasterCard as a monetization rail in the digital world. That's why Bitcoin is so important, because Bitcoin can fix that. Bitcoin is an open standard. There is no gatekeeper, and we can actually build a very, very healthy system that doesn't need that kind of centralized service to dictate its moral standards on everyone.
This has been fascinating. I want to finish off with one. I want to get you to steelman the case against Lightning monetization or this like Lightning creator movement. I think that there's a new creator movement forming here. And we've talked about a lot of the advantages that Lightning can offer. What are the disadvantages? What are the downsides right now that you see for Lightning creators today? What needs to be solved? What are some of the things that make it a bad experience today?
Tough question. I think one of the problems that we currently have is usability, especially when we think about normies, right? That is one of the missions that we took that we have as Starbackr today, that we want to make things more accessible. Because if you are from this space and if you're from this bubble and if you have your own node running at home and set up everything, Lightning is very easy to use and it works great. But if your technical horizon ends at using Instagram, Lightning has a horrible user experience. And I might get booze for that now, but we have received so many support tickets of people that own Bitcoin on an exchange, for example, that is not Lightning enabled yet, and that are wondering why they can't pay invoices on Starbackr, because they own Bitcoin, right? And it says it's Bitcoin, why can't they pay? Yeah, well, because it's a different protocol. So definitely something that adoption might solve with time, but I think we have a lot of work to do on an implementation side to abstract all those difficult things. A great example is Galoy's Bitcoin Beach wallet, right? Bitcoin Beach wallet, I mean, it is a custodial wallet and it is behind KYC gates, but from the usability of that app, it's very cool. It's very easy to use and it abstracts all the difficult things away. And we need more of that. The second part is definitely what I mentioned before, is the amount of capital that's currently being deployed in the legacy world versus the capital that's being deployed for marketing and advertising, I mean. in the Lightning world, right? If you plug into AdSense and you have a site that has a lot of views, you will get you will get a substantial amount of money right away. It might not be the best CPMs and you might not get the best rates, but you will earn money straight from the point and you don't have to do any work. It's very difficult to start that monetization process in the Lightning world. Trying to get advertisers to monetize, to do ads on your page or to do ads on your podcast is not easy when starting out, especially not with such a, if you think about the legacy world, risky environment, right? Because it is like that financial things and people don't understand Bitcoin really, and especially not legacy companies. It's always very like nerdy and people are like, well, I don't want that. So I think that's a big like challenge to overcome as well. I think those are the two reasons why I wouldn't suggest it to everyone. But thinking about it, I would probably suggest it to everyone, because in the end, if you sat down for like a whole day and read a little bit about it, and most people will be able to set up a Lightning wallet or like set up a Bitcoin wallet and monetize it, but not everyone, right? That's a little bit the issue I see.
Right. Well, I want to finish this off with a segment I do at the end of every episode called the Lightning Round. Some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready for the Lightning Round?
Yes.
All right. First question. Among the billion-dollar creator apps we have out there today, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, OnlyFans, all the ones that people are familiar with, Instagram, which will be the first to fully integrate Lightning? I should probably actually remove Twitter from that because they kind of have a tip jar thing going. Among the others, which will be the first to integrate Lightning payments within their app?
OnlyFans, I think.
Interesting. And how will they do it? Will it be a subscription thing? Will it be a value for value thing?
I think it will be the same monetization models that they have today, but paid with. I don't think they will implement Lightning itself. I think they will implement crypto probably. But I think it will be the same monetization models that they have today, but just with different payment rails.
Interesting. If you were in Mark Zuckerberg's shoes today, and your task was to reposition the company and help it adjust in the context of this shift we may be seeing in advertising, what is your first step to reposition Facebook to benefit from this discussion we talked about, of this next era of advertising where users are getting paid? How do you do that?
As a Bitcoiner, I'm obviously very biased on that one, but I would definitely change the company's name immediately. but I think that's a very difficult question to answer.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I gotta say, obviously, like plugging in Bitcoin as payment method for the current monetization model would be an easy to do first step. But again, like getting the education out to all those people that are currently like monetizing on that platform is insanely difficult. But I think that would be the first step to actually give the opportunity or to give the possibility to monetize via Bitcoin on the current system, to not pay with credit card only, but maybe to have like crypto wallets or Bitcoin wallets on the platform. And to be honest, like I'm not a very big fan of how Facebook approaches like monetization on that platform. And if I was actually Mark Zuckerberg, I would probably like re-architecture everything.
Interesting. Okay, I want to get your estimate for how much our data is worth. And I've seen a couple of metrics. I won't share them until I hear your answer, because I want to hear your sense for like the a normal user. Imagine someone living in America, just because most of our listeners here are Americans. The average American user, how much money are advertisers paying to reach them each year?
That's two different questions, right? The one question is how much is data worth, or how much is our data worth, and it definitely depends on, is that data accurate? I have no idea how much an advertiser would pay or does currently pay to reach a single user. I think if I would say I think if I would say a number, it would probably be below $20 because I've seen CPCs, so cost per clicks on like social media, for example, which are like 19 cents per click or conversion. It's like insanely cheap. So I would say probably below $20 per user. But I think accurate data and actually, so 100% valid data is not indefinitely like, but is worth much more than that. Maybe like depends on the product you're selling, but I'd say like $100. If you actually, if you know that that will be a conversion, I would pay as much as 75% of the product worth, right? Or like the
Yeah,
margin.
yeah, 100%. Now, the one data point I have on this is from Facebook's earnings, you can calculate out the average revenue per user in their different subsegments. So they have like the Americas, they have Europe, they have Asia. What are the customers worth in those segments? And the average revenue per user is over $100
Wow.
per year for a user on Facebook.
Wow. That's insane.
So yeah, I believe it's like, and this is only in Americas. I believe in in Africa it's much lower. In Europe it's a little bit lower. In Asia it's somewhere in the middle between Africa and Europe. But it's like kind of staggering. I think it was like $30 per quarter was the average revenue, and this may be a couple of years old, so it may be higher now. But yeah, I think if people understood that, and that's just Facebook alone, by the way, that Facebook and Instagram, of course, but that's only one. Like then you add in Google, you add in Snapchat, you add in Twitter, and there's a reasonable case here. And then you add in all the out of home stuff and all the. There's a reasonable case for making that our data is already worth $500 a year across all these different apps. Like, and then you start to think about like, what could that mean if half of that went directly to the user and the user gave better data, and then you expand the pie double, and then now both get 500, the user and the platform. It's like there's money to be made here. It's a big opportunity, especially for something that users don't even recognize they're doing. Like no one would ever, if I said, will you pay $500 a year to use Facebook and Google and Twitter, there'd be no way.
Yeah.
But
you're paying with attention.
That is worth that much already. Anyways, is there any book that has meaningfully changed your view of the world? Any book recommendations?
Oh wow. In general, you mean?
In general.
That's another tough question. I think the last one I read that really got to me was The Price of Tomorrow from Jeff Booth, I think is his name. Yeah, Booth is his name. Yeah. Obviously, like a moose Bitcoin standard, although I have controversial takes on that one. But definitely that one as well. I think it's required for every Bitcoiner to read that. But I think The Price of Tomorrow was the last one that really got to me, especially when it comes to the way that our economy and like our spending develops, right? And what I said in the beginning, that we as a society have to understand that things of quality will require us to pay more for things, and that it can't always get cheaper. Obviously, with recommending Price of Tomorrow, things should get cheaper with like technology advancing, or at least have better quality. But that is something that we have to understand as society. So that's something that really got to me recently. Yeah,
I like it. If you could only hold one asset for the next decade and it could not be Bitcoin, what asset would you hold?
Well, I mean, I got into Bitcoin 2 years ago and I don't own anything else anymore. So now thinking about that is really, really tough. I think it would probably be gold, because I definitely see the risks of not having like a real cap, right? but I think you said like 2 years now, so I think the risk of that cap like exploding spontaneously is quite low. So I'd probably go for gold. But yeah,
I
obviously
like it.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a tough question. It
Yeah, it
really gets
really
people
is.
thinking.
Mhm.
Awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time. Where can people go to learn more about you and the work you're doing?
Well, they can definitely check out my Twitter, which is Edge21M currently. I hope it will be in the future as well. Then you could go to Starbackr and see what we are doing there, which is starbackr.com or app.starbackr.com for the web app. Yeah, so I think that are the best two places to learn about me or what I'm doing.
Awesome. Thanks again for taking the time. Hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin.
All right. In the last 7 days, you guys sent in 25,087 sats. That came in from 161 different supporters. Very cool to see. Thank you to everyone who is sending in sats. Let's take a look. We got the top 5 supporters of the week. Mary Oscar with 4,774 sats. Auburn Citadel with 3,337 sats. An anonymous user from Castamatic with 2,837 sats. Another anonymous user, 2,003 sats. And StemR42 with 1,890 sats. Let's get into the boosts of the week. First up, we have Chandler Bingcoin says, interesting, in response to episode 65 with Fiat Joff. PB5433 says, another great episode, especially the part on login with LNURL auth. Inspired me to look into this and then found Albi browser extension, which I haven't used, but you can pair with your node and it sounds a lot like what you're describing. Keep up the great content. Yes, Albi's a great solution. I think they're going to be integrated very deeply in the next iteration of the internet. I don't quite know where they fit in the overall puzzle, but I know they're going to be an important piece. So definitely check out Albi if you haven't checked them out yet. Anonymous user says, great episode. Thanks, Danny, for your insights on routing node strategies. That is episode 66. Danny is one of the best routing node operators in the world right now. So if you have not listened to episode 66, and if you want to get into routing on Lightning, definitely check out that episode. Brian of London says, boosting from podcastindex.org's page to see if Fiat Joff's node is broken. Yes, Fiat Joff, I think, had an issue with his node a little while ago. Hopefully it's fixed, but thank you for the boost, Brian of London. J24 says, P2P VP. Didn't Matthias just describe Tor and the likes? But I get it. It's not a thing because it's slow compared to a traditional VPN. This honestly goes a little bit over my head. I'm not too sure whether or not this is a good comparison to make, P2P VPN, but it could be. That's got to be a question for Matthias, I think. ASB_best said, good, in response to episode 66. Thank you. We have Scientari says, good talk with Danny. Nice to hear from someone working on both Bitcoin and Lightning on scale at Cash App, as well as on his own node. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really cool to get the perspective of someone who's operating a business at the scale of Cash App, which not many businesses in the world are, and then doing it for himself as well. Mary Oscar sent a test from Podcast Index. BTC DIR sent a heart emoji. An anonymous user said good stuff in response to episode 66. Episode 1 got a boost. That's the very first episode. An anonymous user said great podcast in response to episode 1 with Oscar Mary. Crimson Hummingbird says riveting in response to episode 66. Glad you liked it. Mary Oscar said great episode, really informative. Again, episode 66. AV Parker sent a $sign. Auburn Citadel sent a peace sign. Thomas Aquinas sent a boost that says interesting podcast. BTC DIR sent a heart emoji. MRA sent a thumbs up emoji. SMRTAK said, another great episode. Thank you for inspiring and practical tips for Lightning node operators. I could hear some weird high-pitched noises when Danny was talking about his node. That's interesting. I hope that was just a one-time issue. Let me know if that's not fixed on today's episode. Jim Seifert says, clipping is a PETA. Fountain is messing up. Love the show, though. I know the Fountain guys are working hard on improving the app, and I'm sure they'll get clipping right. Thank you, though, for the boost, Jim. Die Gopher says, good podcast. User 21 million sent a lightning bolt. And Bot is late said, love this show. And Jing Joe sent 2 sats and a comment in another language, which I can't read. But thank you, Jing Joe, for the 2 sats. Looking forward to seeing what you guys send in this week, and I'll have another episode out soon.